Well, hello, everybody. Hi, this is Dennis Miller. As I said, the founder of DCM Associates. I'm very pleased to introduce to you Ginny Waller. Ginny is a managing director with our firm. She's going to be making a presentation today about nurturing safe space, ensuring a healthy and organizational culture. Ginny has an extensive, wonderful background. She's obviously a managing director with our firm. She's a lawyer. She's a seasoned nonprofit executive professional fundraiser. She's a published author. She has 17 plus years of experience with nonprofit boards and operations. She's received numerous accolades in the nonprofit leadership development, strategic planning, operational efficiency, change management, government's best practice, and relationship building, including a few years ago, the award for the nonprofit leadership from the South Carolina Association of Nonprofit Organizations and the 2015 Fundraising Professional of the Year, Midlands chapter. Ginny has that little South Carolina accent, but she's I don't hasn't left her yet, but she's a proud resident these days of Virginia and Washington D.C. So with no further ado, Ginny, it's all yours, and welcome aboard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. You're going to have to work on your Southern accent, though.
My accent's from, even though I live in California, my accent's from the East Coast. I got the Jersey City, 33rd Street and 3rd Avenue, like the Brooklyn accent.
Yeah, we don't hear that at all, Dennis. We don't hear that at all. I appreciate everyone being here today. The only thing I would add to my bio, which most of it was most people it's in one ear and out the other, but the reason that I speak about this topic specifically in nurturing safe space is because I was the executive director of a large rape crisis center in South Carolina, and I worked with individuals that were supporting others in crisis and who they themselves were in a constant state of near burnout because of what they were dealing with, and that secondary trauma and the impact on staff. And it became abundantly clear to me in a very short time there as executive director that my staff were my truest resource. And if I was going to retain them, that I really needed to focus on kind of them as the whole person. Maybe others came to this conclusion sooner. I did not, and I'm hoping that this can provide some information to you about it today. So I do have a few rules that you just will maintain your virtual etiquette that we all know so well now, but that you will be engaged and participate, whether it's dropping questions in the chat or we're a smaller group. You're welcome to just raise your hand and I can reach out. Let's have this be an engaging and interactive conversation so that it can meet your needs. And then lastly, not to be judgmental of others. We all come from our own place. We all have made decisions that we probably are not proud of and others that we can share. And if we're not in a vulnerable position and being kind to each other, we won't be able to do that with each other today and have an honest conversation that might lead us to grow as individuals. So I don't have control of the polling, but what I do have control over is the chat feature. So I just want to hear from you briefly in the poll or in the chat, whether or not or where you fit in this kind of category for dealing with staff retention. This helps me know where we're starting from. What kind of level of crisis are you all in when it comes to staff burnout or staff retention issues? And while you guys are answering that, I'm going to go on to the next slide, and then I'll read the chats, and hopefully Dennis can assist me in looking at those chats. But we're going to be looking at a few things today. One, the learning outcomes for today are twofold. One is to define a healthy organizational culture, because if we don't know what it looks like, then how do we get there? And I believe that healthy organizational culture is one of those things that we talk a lot about, but when we actually sit down to define it, it may be not as clear, a little bit more murky. And then the second part of that is to really identify methods of employee engagement. What are some ways that we can actually engage our employees today on a level that will retain them for the long term? So as I'm looking in the chat, I'm seeing a variety of answers. We have some of you who are here because you're definitely seeing some issues among your team members. We also have some that are in a real crisis with their team, and yeah, maybe everywhere in between. So we're going to have Tony, everywhere in between. So what I would like from you all today is, if you don't hear from me the level of support that you need for your individual team members, or you're having particular problems that aren't addressed in today's session, I'm more than happy for you to reach out to me, and I can advise on that, just so that you're not left hanging after this, because of course we all have our isolated issues that we're bringing to the table. So the why are you here? I want to make sure we're all on the same page. I am guessing you all are experiencing the impact from the Great Resignation. I am an interim director for organizations for nonprofits. I have never been more in demand than I have been in the last few years, last two, because of the Great Resignation. On top of that, you have this quiet quitting, which I love how we give terms to things and suddenly they are something. But you and I know as leaders in these nonprofit organizations that quiet quitting has been a thing for a long time. But the Great Resignation is really impacting us, and we're seeing a large group of people, both in the nonprofit and the for-profit sector, switching out for a variety of reasons. The main reason is they're not willing to put up with really anything anymore. And the question is, what are we doing as their employers, as their leaders, to ensure that at best we are giving them the best chance for success? So my question I'm going to throw to you is, why do you think employees leave? And I would usually do this in a breakout, but because of the small group, I think we can stay here. And that way we're able to get the recording purpose. So if we could have people, you can unmute yourself, but just kind of throw out there why you believe that people leave in your experience.
Lack of engagement, I feel, especially in a hybrid environment or a remote environment, is one of the top reasons we're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. That's spot on. Thank you. What else? Lack of support from leadership. Emily shared. What does that mean, Emily? Lack of support. What does that mean for decision making, authority, empowerment? Okay, so we're going to go into some of these things. Let's talk about the reasons why we believe that employees leave. And Emily did respond that decision making and definitely empowerment in general. So giving individuals autonomy to make decisions, empowering them because we treat them as trusted professionals to get the job done. We'll talk about that today. So thank you guys for that. So there are really three primary reasons, and what you said feeds directly into those things. The number one reason, at least on this page, is having to do with nonprofit passions. What do I mean by that? Well, if we have passion for an organization, then this leads people to making sacrifices on their personal time and ignoring boundaries, ignoring limits, and people will tend to work longer hours, receive less wages, and then grow resentful as all get out because they've sacrificed so much. So the passion really drives them to a whole new level. And the second part of that is culture. And the biggest part of culture that can be a problem is a culture of exhaustion. How many of you, just by hitting the show of hands, can tell me you've dealt with and believe that within your organization, there may be, or within a previous organization, some amount of celebration of exhaustion, like, so tired, I just can squeeze in one more meeting and I got to do this and I'm working late tonight, and everybody's like, oh, that Ginny, she sacrifices so much for this organization. It's because she cares so much. And that celebration of exhaustion is going to continue to just get us time and again. We have to stop that. We have to be very clear about our need to disconnect, and that honoring the person who's working the hardest and sacrificing their family and is not the one getting the most attention, because that is not a reward we want to give out. And then lastly, of course, is bureaucracy, because once organizations see that there are problems, whether it's with performance or whether it's with burnout among team members, immediately your first inclination as an administrator is to reach for a bureaucratic answer, a process or a procedure that's going to fix it all, right? And that actually can end up backfiring, because this becomes micromanagement of space and time, and means that there's less flexibility in the workplace. And what's the number one thing that I hear from applicants for jobs right now on our executive searches? They are looking for flexibility in the workplace. So this can become a major issue. When the nonprofit HR report did a survey in 2020, now let's put all that, where was 2020? That was a tough time period. Things could have changed. But the likelihood is the percentages have only gone up. But at that time, 49% of respondents said that nonprofits don't pay enough, and that's why they got out of the nonprofit sector. 19% said there was little to no opportunity for growth, and 12% said that nonprofits weren't well-run businesses. So this gives you an idea of what they're actually saying as they exit the profession. I would love to see some data currently. So culture accounts for 40% of the difference between high and low performing companies. This is because strategies must go through culture to get executed, right? Smart leaders establish and live team values that support a positive and healthy corporate culture. So if you're able to do this as leaders, not only will your team benefit, but you also will as well. And the bottom line. So what is a healthy workplace? What does a healthy workplace look like? If you're thinking about your organization, I want you to ask yourself these questions. In your organization, do your leaders and employees distinguish between the real emergencies and the things that can wait until next week? i.e., is your organization always on fire, or is it mostly smoke? This is one of the key indicators to an organization that's healthy, because organizations that are healthy they are not living in a constant mode of crisis and reaction. Secondly, is your organization mission focused? And that's a key, that people use that nomenclature a lot, but it's, to put it more succinctly, are you money focused? Are you person focused? Are you org focused? So if you're money focused, you're chasing the funder and you're making your organization fit a funding, resource. If you're person focused, maybe you are centered around your executive director, who's a founder, and you can't separate the organization and the mission from the founder themselves, and that the founder's making all the decisions, or the ED. Or your organization focused, the decisions are being made in the best interest of the organization and not necessarily the mission. So if you're mission focused, all of that will be front and center. Mission will be front and center. Are you investing in your employees? Are you putting their salaries first, their benefits first, or does all your money go back into your clients and your direct services? Investment in employees is a great sign of healthy workplace. Do you live a self-care community? Are you insisting that your team take care of themselves? Otherwise, it's selfish, and that trickle down to others can affect the mission overall. Do you allow a flexible schedule that provides personal time, and that if you don't take that personal time, or that if you do take that personal time, that you will end up having more stress, right? That we all say when we come back from vacation, it's worse than if we just never left at all. Creating a space where they can take it and they don't come back to more than what they left, outside of reasonable boundaries, but a flex schedule with trust. Do we have team rituals, bonding, intentional relationship building among our team members? Do we have a sense of community? Are we project and initiative focused instead of task oriented? Qualitative measures of employee and team performance versus quantitative. You can have both, but looking at conclusions, deliverables at a level that is beyond, we had 5 new signups on our newsletter, or we had more people click through on a specific article directly impacting our mission on this newsletter. Those are different. And we want to think about how we're measuring our impact. Are you a culture of yes, where ideas and change are welcome and often celebrated? And I don't mean you always say yes, but is your immediate response to say no as a leader? Someone comes in, you know, that office idea fairy that comes in and says, get an idea. And you say, absolutely not. Thanks so much, idea fairy, for coming in here with another great idea. Or are you like, you know, I really appreciate you giving me that idea, and I suggest we do XYZ to review whether or not that's something we can do and that it's consistent with our strategic plan and our budget and all of that. Think about whether or not you're a culture of yes. And then lastly, is your change in your organization incremental and positive? Is it done with intention, or is it done as a reaction? Organizations that are healthy are going to be doing it always in a way that is incremental, but forward moving and in a positive way that's very inclusive of others. Are there any questions specifically about the healthy workplace indicators? No. So the more engaged a worker is, the longer they'll want to stay. We know this. And there was somebody, and I'm sorry I didn't get your name when you spoke, but someone said employee engagement is it. This is why they believe people are leaving. You know, employee engagement is where we know people will stay. If everything else is constant, employee engagement is going to be the deal breaker. And then on top of all of that, your employee engagement's linked to productivity. If they perform better, they're going to stay longer because they're more valued. And of course, this all leads to more costs and a bigger impact on from your mission. So we have 3 key areas where we want to engage employees. First, we need to understand their motivation. 2, we need to speak to their employee personality, who they are as an individual. And 3, we need to intentionally build strong relationships with our employees. So defining why, understanding their motivations. I don't know if any of you read Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's a 2009 book. Really love this book because it narrates down the idea of, if we keep at center who we are and why we're doing something, we won't lose direction. And I was really able to apply it directly to you know, each of our nonprofits and the work that we're doing in the nonprofit. But we all come to a nonprofit and our jobs for certain rewards. We come to it with certain expectations. And if we don't know those going in about our employees, we're missing the boat. So really determining their real why. We won't do that today, but I recommend you do this exercise with them, where you actually ask them to really tap into their motivational drives. Why are they there? What does a fulfilling job experience look like for them? So that you can understand their why and what motivates them. The next is we're going to be looking at their personalities. If you have read Gary Chapman's 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, you already know this. I highly recommend these 2 books for using in the workplace. But essentially, he took what he sees in relationships, in marital relationships, and applied this to the workplace, because relationships are all the same, right? And we want to make sure that we are reaching people where they are. So if I'm coming into an office space and I'm bringing little Circes, for those of you who are from the South, you know, Circes, little gifts that you bring in, maybe a chocolate from the gas station, and you drop them off and you give them to people. But the person that I'm giving them to is not receiving gifts. That's not their reward. It's not what fills their cup. Then I've wasted that effort. But I'm going to think I'm giving something and that I should be getting positive results back from them. So really understanding, if Bob needs affirmation after every exercise that he does or a task, then we want to make sure that we are providing that, or that we're giving some sort of verbal affirmation in a meeting. But if I waste my time and give that to Susie, who prefers gifts, I'm spinning my wheels, and that's going to make me frustrated as a leader. So I recommend, obviously the time being what it is today, we want to allow that. But the names of the books are, the first one is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And the second book is Gary Chapman's 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And so just briefly, so that you know these categories, but not to go into depth, because listen, Gary wrote an entire book, like a series, 5 books on this. We could spend all day. I want to just review very briefly. Affirmation is when you give people words of encouragement and an appreciation for what they've done. And it really makes people feel like they've been recognized, whether it's praising them to someone else in front of them, or praising them publicly in a meeting, writing them a letter, or verbal affirmation. This is easy, folks, low-hanging fruit. This is something you can do constantly, consistently throughout the day. Acts of service is when you actually provide assistance, someone who is having trouble keeping up, or someone who's got a project that's overwhelming. This is a great opportunity to step up and say, how can I help you? Key part of this, however, is how can I help you the way you want it done? Because most of our employees and our teams are not going to want any support or assistance if you're not going to do it the way they want it done. That's a key to active service. Quality time, I'll skip gifts because gifts is obvious what that is. Quality time is spending time with them, giving them structured supervision, having lunch with them, having, one-on-one time where you're valuing their time and you don't let anything mess with that schedule. That's someone who is quality time. And then lastly is more physical touch, having to deal with pats on the back or handshakes, high fives, fist bumps, jumps up and down. These are people that have really missed the workplace in the last few years and really need that engagement that feels sort of awkward for many of us coming back. Yes, and I'm right before, when we take a little break for you guys to do breakout, Darlene asked if I can place the author and the book reference in the chat, and I'm happy to do that. Okay, so when we talk about engaging our team, obviously strengthening relationships is a big component of that. And the reason being is because it creates psychological safety. It creates a workplace where individuals feel like they can take risks in their relationship with team members and in their communication on a team. So it can really affect whether or not a team member feels safe sharing feedback with someone face to face, or saying, I don't know, admitting they don't know in a meeting. And if they don't feel safe doing that, then because they may be perceived as being incompetent or uninformed or naive or flat out wrong, then they will not share, and you have not created that space. And the only way to get to a place of psychological safety in your workplace is to create really intentional, strong relationships. There are a variety of ways that you can do this. The primary one is to host some very fun and easy gatherings, whether it is a purely social with personal connections and they foster respect and trust, or whether it's incorporating team building into your regular staff meeting and it only takes 2 to 3 minutes every meeting, part of every meeting, or you have mentor programs, or you have a wellness committee. We'll talk a little bit later where they can work together on a project. So some team projects or task force within your organization can help as well with this. But we want to get relationships stronger. And this is probably the biggest that I've seen as an interim director. Our relationships and our employee engagement in the workplace has been drastically affected over the last few years. So how many of you have formal supervision? If you will drop your response in the chat and let me know, do you have formal supervision with a set agenda bi-weekly? Are you doing formal, doing supervision, but it's just really casual, which is fine? Are you just doing it when you can? Or is there something else that you have? So we have a variety, a large range, looks like. Maybe quite a bit of responsiveness. Okay, some monthly, some casual, so really all over the board. And I want to preface this entire conversation as we go into supervision with, only you know your culture best, okay? So I'm not trying to say this is exactly how you do it or it's wrong. But what we do know about supervision is that supervision is a clear way to establish a relationship with a team member and also reward them with quality time that's going to fill their bucket and make them more confident in their psychological safety in the workplace. So whether you're using supervision in a formal agenda driven by performance eval, or if you're using it as a just check-in 15, 30 minutes and we're out kind of supervision, whatever you do, I highly recommend having some sort of supervision and setting a time for it and not allowing anything else to interfere with that. I mean, other than a real fire. Because these individuals need to know that you value them, that you are busy, and yet you've put them at the top of your list for the day. Wow, what a statement to say to another human being, right? So when you have your supervision, you want to think about 3 focus areas. 1, the work. What are your priorities this week? What do you need from me to accomplish these items? They're driving this conversation. You're simply asking the questions. 2, how are you doing? What else is happening in your life? Are you caring for yourself? Obviously not directly like that. We don't want to be pushy. We're doing it more from a place that is caring, and we want it to be organic, but we want to make sure we hit those points. For some people, it's very natural to have a personal relationship with people. For others, it's not. And so you have to be really intentional about it, especially in the beginning. And then lastly, the process. What's working? What's not? Is that team project going well? Are people not responding? Should we move calls or reorganize your schedule so that you're able to be more responsive? What about team time? Are your priorities allocated properly? So these are things where you're asking again, how can I support you? How can I brainstorm to help you do your job even better? And then of course you want to tie this back to their quantitatives and qualitatives at some point, whether it's on a quarterly basis or an annual basis. Recognition and affirmation is pretty much the easiest. There was a Badgeville research study done back in 2018 that said 79% of those who quit their jobs, it was a survey of like 5,000 people, 79% of those said that lack of appreciation was the main reason, and that can take many forms, right? So we have to keep that in mind. But essentially, this seems to be the easiest way to actually find and engage employees. And yet this is one of the ways that we ignore, and it's so simplistic. Really, this doesn't have to cost anything. And I think that the worst thing that employers can do is make this complicated. Like, this is a KISS all the way. Keep it simple, stupid. This is not a hard one. Just make sure you're doing it and create a routine for yourself during the day. Privileges and gifts, these are coming up with little things during the work week, whether it's giving them a yoga gift card or special privileges that you can get for free because, hello, you're a nonprofit. You can get some freebies from different organizations. Having lunch delivered to their home if they're remote. Looking at different ways that you can invest in your employees in very cost-effective manner, okay? That's gonna meet them where they need it. Don't force them to take it either. Like, they don't have to be gracious or grateful for what you've given them. That's part of it. It's gifts without expectations. Another question for you is, do you provide professional development? You can either provide it that it's required and funded and it's part of your budget. You can sometimes have it if it's available or free, or somebody just happens to bring it up and like something that's out there, or you are so pushed that your staff don't have time for this. And I can tell you that in general, most people respond that it's really just on sometimes when they are able to and when they have funding. Well, I hope that you take away from this that professional development needs to be a key part of your budget. It needs to be a few $1,000s that you set aside for your employees. It may be that it needs to be something you bring in-house so you can save some money and have everyone participate, or you need to make sure that it's something that's done locally by local organizations so that you can get it very affordably or online. But whatever it is, it needs to be something that's very intentional, thought out, and tied to the strategic plan. And then you need to communicate that, right? So when I mean that is, people will say, well, I only make $50,000 a year. Let's give an example. Well, you make $50,000 a year, but you have a benefits package that's worth $20,000. And then you have these tchotchkes that we give you, a free yoga sessions 2 times a month, and that's valued at $250 a year. And then you get professional development of $2,000, and then you get something else, and you get something else, and your total compensation package is well over $90,000. That is important for us to communicate. I value you, and here is how I am doing that. Okay. And I want you to think about how we communicate that to our employees. We want them to know that we value them. So activities to ensure retention. There are a few ways that we can do this that I have identified as being some of the easiest ways to go ahead and really make it a priority for retention. But what I would like to do at this point is for everyone, if you're comfortable and available, to come off mute. You don't have to have the camera on, and I see we've got some questions. I'd like people to come off mute and to provide some feedback on what they believe are some activities that they can implement to ensure employee retention. And we're going to have some crickets here, huh?
Well, I would say having a career path plan, and communicating that, and setting goals and recognizing when they achieve those goals, what they need to do to be on track to achieve those goals. I really think that, that's a way to keep them engaged, and also gives you a temperature check, if you have monthly check-ins or quarterly check-ins, with your staff.
I love that. That's great. So having generally this is your roadmap for how you're going to get to a successful place along the career. What you define as successful as an employee, right, Michael? And then you're checking in with them to see if they're staying on that track as you're going throughout the year.
Hey, Ginny, some of the thoughts that I've had with this is the following here. Back in my medical center days, I think when employees feel heard, when they feel listened to, I think they will have a chance to respond and be retained when they feel cared for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Yet when they feel heard, when they feel like their voice has value, and when they understand that the workplace is set up for them to succeed. Is that fair, Dennis? That's a fair summary. Emily added in the chat that pay's a good motivator. Well, absolutely it is. And I think that is something that we need to consider. We need to stop this mentality of depravity that exists in the nonprofit sector. Listen, I could get on my high horse about this one pretty quickly, because I feel like we live in a mentality of poverty. If we are not suffering as much or more than our services, our programs, our clients that we're serving, then we are not committed to the mission. That has to stop. We need to start investing money into our overhead and our operations of our organizations and into our people. But that can look a variety of ways, Emily. That can look a variety of ways. It doesn't have to just be pay. It can be benefits. It can be other things like professional development and other things. We can do it in an incremental and positive way, which is what we talked about with change needing to happen. Yeah, Tony, education opportunities, professional development. Tatiana, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think having flexibility and adaptability with your employees is definitely a big thing. If you're so strict and following policy and protocols and your plan so strictly, I mean, life comes up with a lot of different things, and you need to have the flexibility and adaptability with your employees to be able to keep them, because if not, then they're going to be like, this is too much work, this is too much burnout, stuff like that, and they're going to want to leave.
Absolutely. Hey, Tatiana, let me ask you, how do you, flexibility really requires trust. How do you ensure a trust relationship between the supervisor and the employees that are being allowed this flexibility?
That's a good question. I know, oh gosh.
It's hard.
That is hard. That is hard. I think that trust needs to be built at the beginning, and opening up to allowing for in a work environment that is, you keep open communication and you're able to talk about anything and everything with your supervisor or your coworkers, stuff like that. I think that trust is really built at the beginning. So trying to build it, if you're already like an employee of so many years, that's a little bit more complicated. But for sure, that question is yet to be determined for me.
Yeah. Well, that's the big ticket, right? And now we're seeing that people are coming back into the office or not. And there's this question of what's happened to their performance in the last few years. And there's a trust issue there. Brenda also said trust among some other things about hybrid opportunities, really moving away from that traditional office mentality, but all those things require trust. I want you guys to think about what that looks like and how we can hold ourselves accountable as well as the employees for performance in that trust relationship to allow for the flexibility and this alternative work environment. And I'm posing all of this to you because I don't have the answer either, right? I mean, there are some strategies. One of them is if we're measuring their performance based on qualitative analysis, and we're saying the value you bring by implementing and succeeding on program A is what we're measuring, then we know if they get to the end and they've achieved program A and implementation of program A, then they're doing their job. But we've got to be really good as leaders to make sure we've set some very clear parameters around that. So that maybe it's check-ins like Michael was talking about, where we're doing some quarterly check-ins where they are in implementation of program A, so that we're making sure we're staying on them. And then guess what? Leaving them alone if they are achieving what we've given them, or analyzing and asking them if they're not busy. Let's get some more out there. Yes, accountability through achievements and outcome measures. Exactly, Brenda. That is definitely one way to build trust. We've talked about another way today with building relationships, right? And making sure that we're valuing the voice of our employees. What are some other ways? I've lost my screen. So I'm going to give you a few tips since you've all gone quiet, but I know you know more ways. So I'm going to give you a few and get ready because we're going to write fast, okay? Because then I'm going to open the floor up to questions, and then I want to end with a poem that really means a lot to me when I'm in my interim roles, and it's kind of how I keep perspective and ground the team as a whole. So really the simplest way to stop your employees from leaving is to develop a plan to make them stay, right? That's it. So we want to look at a few things. One, wellness. Is our workplace centered around self-care? If you have not read it, and I'll put it in the chat while we're having our poem read, Dying for a Paycheck is a book that came out in 2018 about how modern management is harming employee health. And it is astounding. You read it and you say, yes, of course, but to think that we're playing a role in that as upper management is scary. Do have a super strict sick policy. You place value on health. And I'll have a manager be like, well, Beth is sick again. This is like the second time this month. And my feelings about that are, if Beth has the leave, not my problem. Moving right on. Don't have any investment in it. I want to make sure she's healthy. And beyond that, we're gravy. Don't celebrate exhaustion. If someone comes in and says, I'm so stressed today, I didn't get enough sleep last night, like that is a cause for concern, and someone you should be checking in with after that meeting and talking to them, one, about, hey, what's going on? And two, like, let's not celebrate that. Like, I want this to be a safe place, but let's be careful about celebrating that and saying it's okay to have that going on, especially if it's repetitive, right? We want to not isolated incidents. Developing a wellness program based on your team's needs. This is easy. A wellness committee, listen, your staff, some of them, the ones already are the ones that love to bond together. Those individuals are really looking for an opportunity to get together and talk about what the office needs. We'll give it to them. Let them come together and come up with, what does the office need in a wellness program? Well, we need potlucks. Okay, potluck. We need a once a month a team building retreat. Okay, let's do team. As long as they come to you with a plan that they has really assessed the needs of the current team members, then that's it. In one location, we did a lunchtime walking group, and whoever wanted to join could join. In another one, we had yoga offered on Fridays by one of our local organizations who was also a nonprofit, and it was one Friday a month, but people could come if they wanted to versus not. But your wellness committee drives this. So it's not you as an ED or you as the VP having to do this. Next, and here you go, Emily, here, this is for you. You have to implement a living wage policy. You either spend money now or you spend money later. So you need to go ahead and do what you have to do to get those numbers up. And when your board says, well, we don't have the money, then you say, well, find it, because we cannot continue to allow our people to feel less than. You can do a comp of local nonprofits or others that you admire that have a good, healthy organizational workplace, and that's going to tell you a lot. And you don't have to do it tomorrow, right? You don't have to pay raises tomorrow. You should set incremental goals to get you there. Create a safe space so that they can be really honest about who they are and where they are. I want to give you an example. If you have had an employee, this has been years ago, who said, I just am not feeling this job right now. I'm really not happy in it. She was a high level clinician, licensed director level. And she's like, I'm starting to burn out. She felt safe coming to tell me that. She told me, and get this, she was interested in doing cosmetology. And I said, how can I support you so that you're in a healthy place? And when you make a decision, let me know. And so she started going to cosmetology classes in the evenings. I made sure that her schedule worked so that she was able to do that. And 10 years later, she's still with the same organization. And it was the value and recognition of her as a whole human being that brought that to that space. So you're creating a safe space for them to say, I don't think this is a great fit anymore, and being able to help them exit if that's what's necessary in a really graceful way. Building the supervisory mentee relationships, coaching your direct reports on how they supervise too. Don't drop the ball on the individuals that they're supervising. And then making sure you're staying at the qualitative level in performance, at least. You can also do quantitative. And then lastly, and the one you guys kept hitting on, was allowing flexibility in your schedule, in your workplace, trusting your employees. And if you don't trust them, figuring out why and what you can do to change that. Automating some of the admin tasks. Like, think about the things that you do daily where it's just really duplicative and they having to fill out a report for this and a report for that. And think about ways that you can help streamline some of those operational efficiencies so it's not so burdensome on them. Make their lives easy. If it's virtual, which, right, Brendo said, you got to work this new office workspace, then you're going to really need to have some strict communication methods through real-time communication tools. Shouldn't be texting alone anymore. There should be some video software, obviously, online project management tools that you can use. Those days of just operating in with a hybrid workplace in a really reactive way is over. We have to be strategic, and there are a number of things you need to make sure that your individuals are engaged with each other. Oh, and you have to train them. P.S. You got to train them how to use those things. Monitoring the employee workload to make sure that they're able to get the work done in the time allotted, or reprioritizing or revising the job descriptions or the duties as needed so that people are able to get their work done. Instead of just keep saying other duties as assigned, which is what we do in the nonprofit world, actually giving some thought to that. Katiana, I really love that. Trust can be built through consistency. In the chat, that was her feedback. And that's so true, that when our employees know how we are going to respond and what we're going to do, and that we're consistently going to be trusted and or be able to be trustworthy with our word, they will definitely trust us, and vice versa, right? Okay, so I'm going to go take us to a start, stop, keep. I want you to spend 2 minutes, if that, sitting there. You've got your paper in hand, and I want you to write to 3 things, maybe one in each category. One thing you're going to start doing based on what you heard today. You've probably been thinking about it for a long time, and today's the impetus to make it happen. What's one thing you're going to stop doing as a leader immediately? And what's one thing that you're going to keep doing? So we have to pat ourselves on the back too. What we do, management, supervision, and leadership is very, very hard, no matter what others think, right? And if anyone wants to share in chat, I would love to hear it, but I'm going to give you just another minute of quiet time to write start, stop, keep. And I'll write in the chat while you guys are doing that. Okay, does anyone want to share with us in the chat before? I would love to hear. If anyone had a start, stop, keep. Brenda, you said if your state has a recovery-friendly workplace initiative, then someone, oh, I'd love to hear more about that. Someone can become designated to help create a healthy, accepting, non-stigmatizing culture of acceptance. A recovery-friendly workplace initiative. I'm gonna have to look that up.
That is something that we're working on here in the state of Nebraska. And there is a community of practice nationally with, I think, 23 plus states represented who are pursuing that RFW within their own state. And it's really, so I work in the Division of Behavioral Health, and it's really focusing on whole health and, you know, looking at maybe your policies related to behavioral health challenges, being flexible with, you know, being able to go to appointments, counseling, things like that, making it okay to say, I'm not okay. You know, that kind of thing. If you want to look up RFW in New Hampshire, Governor Sununu there started the first RFW initiative in the United States that I understand. And so fantastic program. So
love that. What a great framework to work within. That's really exciting. Thank you for that tip.
Yeah.
Are there any start, stop, and keeps before we go into our poem? It looks like we'll get to finish a little bit early. Okay, so we have some feedback that we're going to start working on a self-care environment. Stop putting full responsibility on one person or policy to make a change. Boy, isn't that true? That's one of the ones we all love to do when we just assign it, go make it, and hope that everybody just goes along with the change. And to continue uplifting the individuals that you work with, affirming, right? That's free. Why not? Why not continue to be that voice in that space? Just looking at the plans for each individual and how to support them. Learn about how individuals prefer to be recognized. So learning how people, what is really bringing people to the workplace, 1, and then 2, what is their language of appreciation that is going to give value, that's going to bring value, that you're not going to spin your wheels and they're going to get what they need to hear from you. And then really continue building in relationships and checking in with individuals beyond the work. That's great. You guys, really great. So I'm going to ask for a volunteer here with this group. I don't know if I'm going to get it, but I'm going to ask. Because I love this poem, and I believe that every presentation that I do involving my teams should end here. So the invitation to Brave Space was actually dealing with LGBTQI+, IA+, in the workplace, but I am absolutely fully belief that this applies to really all of our workplaces. And wouldn't it just be wonderful if we could make our workplaces be like this all the way around? So if I have a volunteer that would be willing to unmute and read this for me, I would really appreciate it, since I've been reading the whole time.
Invitation to Brave Space, written by Mickey Scott Bay Jones. Listen, together we will create brave space, because there is no such thing as a safe space. We exist in the real world. We all carry scars, and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume, excuse me, the volume of outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together, and we will work on it side by side.
Ah, Emily, thank you so much. Powerful, speaks to my heart. I hope it did to yours as well. For those of you who had additional questions beyond this training, wanted to talk about a specific issue, I'm really happy to help you. And I want to thank Dennis and DCM for giving me a platform to speak to you all. And of course, I'm working with DCM as a managing director and helping with the executive searches, and I've had such a fabulous time, and I really appreciate this opportunity. I'll open the floor for questions if you have any now. And if not, then we can end early. Okay, Dennis, I think we're good. Thank you all for joining me today.
Thank you, Jenny. That was tremendous.
But you're on mute.
What happened? I heard somebody say something about being on mute.
It looks like Dennis is talking, but he's on mute, so we can't hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was great, Jenny, and we'll get it edited and we'll get it sent out, and everybody get the recording. What was that? Was that Emily? Was that my friend Zaremski?
With
All right, listen, I got to take a call. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.